Welcome back to our podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship as a profession. And we have Rivers Corbett here today. Rivers, you've got quite a background in entrepreneurship. You've been on the angel side. You've been a entrepreneur in residence on the board of various grassroots organizations. And if we look back in time, entrepreneurship was really something, a euphemism that people did when they were unemployed. Yes, last week I'm unemployed, this week I'm an entrepreneur. And sometimes it was even more or less a stain on the resume where, we didn't want to mention to our relatives that we were an entrepreneur because then they would feel sorry for us that we were unemployed. But over the last little while, we've started to see this idea of entrepreneurship as a career, as a profession. That's something that we train for, we gather the experience for, similar to a doctor or a lawyer, and then we have a career, and that career progresses through stages over time. And that suggests to me that there must be an infrastructure that needs to take place to prepare people for that career, and we should be expecting life cycle changes or phases in that career. Maybe you could give us a bit of a sense for what that structure of that individual, what's that career profession preparation look like? And then later on, we'll perhaps talk about some of the support that a society and a community can give to someone preparing for such a career.
Yeah, thanks, James, very much. And I'm honored to be part of your podcast today. And you're right, I ooze entrepreneurship. It's in my blood. You cut me open. It's not green. It's not blue. It's not red. It's E. My blood type is E. And so when we talk about entrepreneurship as a career, even though through the span of many generations in the history of the earth, there's always been entrepreneurs who have been very instrumental in the moving ahead of society, financially, spiritually, culturally. It really hasn't got, as Rodney Dangerfield used to say, get respect until I think about the last 10 to 15 years, at least in the era that I live in. And one of the reasons that transformation is starting to happen from you get a job, you go through a career, you retire, and then you reap the rewards of it is that the whole industrial world is really on its head right now as to what that traditional trajectory is always supposed to be for someone that is developing a career. And so you're left with this brand new open space of, well, what do I do? Where do I go next? And you add in a cultural piece of new people, millennials, if we'll call them that, although I think there's a lot of 60-year-olds that are like millennials, but are saying, you know what, I want to take control of my own life. I'm tired of working for the man or working for the woman. So that's really started to significantly open up the dialogue around what is that world. What's that great new Columbus discovery that we need to go through? And so that's one of the key things I think is important for society to go through in order to really make that shift to considering entrepreneurship as a career. And it really is a career. It's a career for me. And you go through different stages, just like working for Ma Bell or Mobile Exxon or Apple. There are career changes that happen to you through that journey with one company or two or three. And entrepreneurs go through the same thing. But in order to start that journey, I think there needs to be a significant, and I emphasize with a capital S, focusing on bringing the dialogue around entrepreneurship into the school level at a very, very early stage. Not that they have to build businesses, but they have to talk about creatively solving problems as it relates to customer needs. Not just because it's a cool thing to do, but it's as it relates to customer needs. And get to think about these problems in a way that economically can make some money. So I think by bringing in those elements of entrepreneurship as a mindset in math, social studies, gym, whatever, we start to then innately start to have people considering that journey, first of all, of one that they want to explore. So the guidance counselors say, okay, have you thought about being an entrepreneur? And that's the first stage. The second stage, obviously, is getting access to the appropriate resources to educate, mentor. You've heard of accelerators, obviously, and incubators being associated with various entrepreneurial communities to immerse people in the environment. I'm a big ice hockey fan, so I immerse myself in that whole environment and really get to appreciate that environment around it. I'm not a music guy, so when I was immersed into violins, it didn't connect with me. So you immerse them into the community so that they start to understand a little bit more about it and start to say, yeah, I like this. So I've gotten to first base. Let's keep going around the bases and see where this is ultimately going to take us. Then it gets into starting your own business, either failing or growing. You then go through, you go through 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and you experience that. And you learn not only the rules of the game, but how to play the game, but you also understand those softer skills such as perseverance and confidence that go with it. And then you just keep playing that game where ultimately you have success, and heck, you'll get fewer successes than you do failures, but that's all part of the journey. Just like, there's only one CEO typically in a company. There's not 50. And you just keep going through that journey of learning and applying. But here's the great thing about being an entrepreneur is that you're living your own journey, your own dream, which, yes, has customers to it, but ultimately you're in control of that journey. And I think that's actually the great thing, but that's also the tough thing, because it takes a lot of self-development, self-tolerance, self-direction, and a lot of 24/7. So that's kind of, I think, what's happening, by the way. I think it is happening, and I think that process is speeding up more and more as we look around the communities we have, much more embracing the dialogue and the application of knowledge around helping individuals be successful in their businesses.
Now, Rivers, when I think of a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, we can put them through a program of some kind with some knowledge, experiential work, and certify that at the end they are a doctor and that they have the capability to take care of people. Is that possible with an entrepreneur, that we can put them through some kind of program, and I'll use that loosely, and at the end say that, yes, they are an entrepreneur, and so that would it make sense for them to take this piece of paper that they've now got and be able to claim to investors or co-founders that they know what they're doing? Or is entrepreneurship something different, that we really can't certify that someone has a capability of being an entrepreneur, and therefore we can rely on them to do what needs to be done?
Yeah, I appreciate the comment, and I use a lot of sports analogies. It's kind of like studying the game of baseball. You understand all the rules. You understand the strategy behind it. Many of your audience would have probably watched the movie Moneyball. But until you're actually immersed into the journey of applied playing, you can't get to the majors. And so, in my opinion, there needs to be a combination of both. But it's more applied knowledge and failing, by the way. I mean, there are some venture organizations that will not invest in an entrepreneur until he or she has ultimately failed at running a company 2 or 3 times, because that's part of the journey to success. So the answer is, does knowledge work? Yes, of course, but it ultimately comes down to how that knowledge is applied, and you can only do that by being on the field, getting your face dirty, getting hit in the face by a wild pitch and moving forward with it. That's the only way it can work. I think the doctors and lawyers and engineers, and I'm neither any of them, but I think they probably live in a more controlled environment where they have support that helps them get through those dirty and dark times to the point which they're ultimately given that certificate. And the other part, which is interesting, I'm just thinking about this out loud, I don't know if there ever can be a certificate, you are an entrepreneur. I think you can always say, I'm an entrepreneur today, but does it really mean that you understand everything to be successful? No. The odds are, 50% fail within 2 or 3 years. I think that's the stat. So I think it's just a role you play of applied knowledge that you're continually learning how to become better and better and better. And so a little combination of both, but if you're not doing the applied knowledge, forget it. It's not going to happen.
That suggests to me, Rivers, that maybe in the college university environment that entrepreneurs should be part of, or at least want to be entrepreneurs, the students should be part of an apprenticeship kind of approach in which rather than just be in the classroom, they should spend a significant or reasonable amount of time in a startup in some capacity, maybe either job shadowing an experienced entrepreneur or starting their own company. And the other thing that what you suggested is that in order to make this as a career, there should be continuous learning in many professions. For example, in engineers or the rest of them, after they get their engineering degree and become part of an engineering association, they have to continually learn. They have to demonstrate that they have continually increased their knowledge base in order to maintain that certification. And from what I'm hearing, that once a person graduates and is in a startup, even if they're doing well, there should be that continuous learning capability or possibility.
Yeah, the interesting thing about what you just said, are referencing, James, is that with engineers, with doctors, with lawyers, there's an expectation that you join these associations, become accredited, get registered for your nurse or whatever. Being an entrepreneur, there's not an expectation. There's no association that says you can't open or start a business until you have ultimately worked for us or gone through X amount of years, and therefore the banks won't give you any money until you're accredited. And so you're right. This is where the self-discipline comes into play. That we need to recognize that the times are changing. The only constant is change, and so we as entrepreneurs need to be continually, as part of our journey, looking for increased knowledge, increased application of knowledge, increased networking to keep us on edge with regards to what's happening. What I am a big fan of is football, also NFL football, and I admire Tom Brady. He's consistently looking at ways, and this guy's been in the league forever. But he's not playing the same game way he did, years ago. He's playing it differently, new way to approach with his body and so on. So there's got to be a lot of self-discipline with regards to that. You referenced it a little earlier about apprenticeship and so on, and I can't remember the name of the university in the United States, but they actually have got a quote-unquote frat house that is a incubator of entrepreneurs. You can't get in there unless you are actually being an entrepreneur. And so they bring all of these people, men and women, together to incubate ideas at the university level. And so they take that knowledge and they apply it through a community or an environment that nurtures that knowledge through application. And I think that's just brilliant to be able to do it. Just because you study accounting in school doesn't mean you're a good accountant. But this particular approach to applied knowledge is bang on. To get them used to that. Not just they're the entrepreneurs. No, now they're in a path to have knowledge and then apply it. I can't just guess at it.
Well, Rivers, if we wanted to move to a different topic or a similar one, is you were alluding to what a university can do to try and promote entrepreneurship. But what about society in general? What is some of the structural elements? Certainly, we can give recognition and make it a desirable career path. I have seen municipalities that will track young people who visit, let's say, an entrepreneurship seminar or an event that's being held. And they will look at these young people and say, well, this is a 20-year-old just showed up at this entrepreneurial event. We'll keep them in our database and then see if we can help them over time. But the key difference with entrepreneurs and hopefully doctors and lawyers is that entrepreneurs can fail the first several times, or they can have a success and fail again, and maybe again, and then have another success. So it can be very intermittent. How do we as society help people in not get hung up with, oh, this person failed, they should go and get a real job, or this person was successful, then they didn't do well in the next one and then did well? How do we get society to recognize that this too is part of the career?
Yeah, so one thing I love about the United States is actually they do, I think, a very good job of cheering the journey, and they're the population is very good at accepting there's another day, and we should cheer the effort, not just the failure. But ultimately, it comes down to a couple of elements. The first one is that it's we do a great job. You're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur of hanging within our own bubble and cheering each other. And we have great parties and we tell everybody how great we are and so on. But the challenge with society is that we need to get outside of our bubble and take responsibility to educating the audience that doesn't know a lot about entrepreneurship. And so that's when I think when the extension happens beyond our own community, that we start to speak a different language. It's like, okay, if you take Little Italy in New York, well, let's take Little Italy and start to take it to Japan, Little Japan or Little China or whatever it's called in New York, so that we start to understand each other's language. So then we get to appreciate the value that we bring into our contributions to society. So that's one way culturally in which we have to do it. And the other way has to do with just turning around and we do a great job saying thank you to our armed forces. They are critical to the fabric of society. But when you get right down to it, also, none of those people in the armed forces will get paid unless the entrepreneur is successful. So this is again an education of value to society and how it moves forward. I think only through those aha moments, geez, I never thought about it that way moments, to the extended audience, will we really start to create momentum and create support for those people that want to go along and be an entrepreneur. And look, not everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. I totally get that. I mean, if I'm having a heart attack, I don't want an entrepreneur. I want a doctor. But the fact is that entrepreneurs need, in my opinion, much more appreciation and recognition. And I'll call out some academics in this piece also. It's not just about academia. It is also about applied academia. And that's really when everything hits the ground. So we are all teammates in this journey of life. And the entrepreneurs, to me, are, well, I drank the Kool-Aid, the most important, minus moms. Moms get the top of the heap, but for me.
Thank you, Rivers. As we neared the end of our podcast, do you have any takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I do, James. First of all, I'm going to suggest they continue to listen to your podcast because, in my opinion, you bring in some pretty significant, amazing guests. But ultimately, I think it really comes down to, if you made it this far, I want to say thank you, because it means that I've made an impact on your day. Now, what I'd like you to do is just, if you see an entrepreneur out doing a small business, it could be any size of business, but just go out and say, thanks, I really appreciate what you're trying to do for our country, for our town, and bringing jobs and increase taxes and so on. We say thank you to the armed forces all the time. Let's thank an entrepreneur maybe once a week. And that momentum alone will, I think, create awareness, but also help to keep that entrepreneur going when they're having their dark day, like the people in our armed forces do also.
Okay, thank you very much, Rivers.
Thank you.
And we've been talking today with Rivers about entrepreneurship and some of the structure that needs to be put into place in order to create that as a more career option for young people, particularly when that career option will change over time as they progress from wannabes to entrepreneurs to serial entrepreneurs, maybe migrate into being an angel investor, and then later on in their career as a mentor and advisor to others. It'd be really cool to see that as a career plan for young people today. Thank you very much, Rivers.
Thank you, sir. It's been my pleasure. I appreciate the time, and the best to your audience and you, sir.
Good day.